Hey Reefers, welcome back to Grand Canyon Reefs, and in today's video we're taking a tour of my new tank 4 months after setting it up. So today's video is just going to be a general overview of everything that is inside the tank and runs the tank. And so, to start it off, we can talk about the tank itself. The tank is the new Red Sea Reefer 425 G2, which has a 91 gallon display. And this tank has been set up now for around 4 months, while most of the fish and coral inside of it are around 1 to 2 years old. And next we can dive into the coral that are in it. So some of the coral and things that I'll point out is that I've been really trying to go for coral specific gardens all throughout the tank. And so I'll highlight some of those here as the fox face gets in the frame as always. So here I have the Zoa garden in the making. And right next to it as well I have the Acan garden in the making, or Micromusas. In the middle lower of the tank I have the Euphyllia garden, which only right now has hammers and frog spawn, but eventually I probably will add some more torches and other Euphyllia as well. And the last coral garden in the making, my personal favorite, is the Goniopora garden. A couple other corals I'll highlight in the coral overview section are just a couple different acroporas and montiporas and different SPS that are now just fully starting to take off and turn into mini colonies. And next month I'll definitely do a more in-depth overview of all the different corals that are in the system, as well as just a lot more top-down shots and some different growth shots over the last couple months to years that these corals have been in the tank, just so you can kind of see the growth rates that some of the different softies and SPS have had in my system. So stay tuned. And moving on from the actual corals in the tank to what lights the corals. So currently, and for pretty much the whole duration that I've had all the coral in the tank, I have been using this Reef Breeders Photon V2. It is the 48-inch, which covers the whole tank. And then in the front, I have a Reef Breeders Lumen Bar V2, and it specifically is the high octane UV bar, which has just a bunch of lower 400 nanometer bulbs, which appears like a more purplish color, which is great for coral growth. And then the back one is just a Chinese branded LED bar, which is only 470 nanometers, which is that pure blue that you guys can see. And that blue is just really nice for adding coral pop and a lot more for just like enjoying the corals yourself. But as you kind of look down or up on the lights, you can see how the front one is much more purple based than the back one, which is purely blue. And as you can see, I'm just using random shelf mounts that I got off Amazon, which are then bolted into a wood board, which is bolted into the wall. And that way I can access the tank from all sides without having any sorts of mounts in the way. Moving on from the lights onto the equipment that is actually inside the tank. For flow, I'm using 2 MP40s, which are on the back, one on the left and one on the right, as well as 2 ice cap gyres. They are the 2Ks, which one is located on the very back bottom to just essentially completely blow water on the bottom of the bare bottom and sweep up any detritus and just always keep that in suspension and down into the overflow. And I'm also using this Eheim auto feeder, which jumps right over the pump, which is really nice because it just disperses it right away and doesn't let the food flow over into the overflow. And the specific food that I'm using inside there is the PE mysis pellets, which are the 2 millimeters. Moving on from the equipment in the actual tank, we'll transition on down into the equipment here in the sump. And so, as you can see, there's kind of a lot going on. I definitely still have some organizing to do. I'm still kind of adding and taking out equipment, deciding what I do and don't want to have running in this system. but I definitely will kind of tidy it up more, get a lot more cord management going, and things like that. But moving on to the actual equipment inside the sump, the water essentially will flow down from the pipes there on the right and will enter through that gate valve. I definitely have a lot of opinions on that gate valve, and will make a video hopefully within the next month or so, kind of just highlighting some of the experiences that I've had, as well as a lot of the other experiences that I've seen in the Facebook group here locally in Arizona, as well as just the Red Sea International Facebook group as well. So stay tuned for that video as well. But after the water passes through that gate valve, it enters into the Reef mat, which I just got when I got this tank as well, and I'm absolutely loving the filter roller. Incredible product. Not having to change filter socks anymore is the best part, but then also the water clarity has just been amazing. So would highly recommend to anyone that's on the fence about that to definitely go ahead and go through with that and make that purchase. We'll definitely see an improvement on your tank. And after the water flows out of that filter roller, it enters into this kind of open area in the front sump, where you'll see a couple different things. You'll see some Polyp Lab ceramic media blocks, as well as a heater, probes, and different dosing lines as well. And then I also have a little makeshift egg crate container, which will hopefully in the next week or so have some Chaeto and different macroalgae. And lighting that will be my Neptune grow light. And you'll also see right there I have a AI Nero 3 pump, which is for two reasons. One, or I guess three actually, to really just keep the flow in the sump moving, to not let to try to settle here either, to get some flow through the refugium once I do have Chaeto in there, and then as well as to immediately mix up the different additives like alk and calcium once they get dosed, to not let them precipitate out anywhere. And moving on to the back section of the sump, you'll see my Bubble Magus Curve 5 skimmer. I usually run it a little bit more on the dry side. And next to that as well, kind of hard to see back there, but there is a BRS reactor, which I have about a half a cup of carbon in, and I change that out around every month or so. Not exact or anything, but definitely do try and do that periodically as I do water changes and so. And you can't see it right now, but essentially right behind the filter roller is the return pump, which returns the water from down in the sump over to the chiller and then back to the tank. And I also have a fan down here, which is just pointing down the sump to help keep some circulation, as well as some fans that are located right behind all the different plumbing, which just help keep the entire under sump and electronic area well ventilated and no humidity that moisture that builds up. And I'm also just using some different Amazon motion detected lights that are super nice and just help keep everything lit up when you're working down in your sump. Moving on to the cabinet on the right side of the tank. This one has a couple different reasons. It is where I store the chiller, and I'm using a current 1/10 horsepower chiller. And because I have a couple different fans throughout the tank, both on the sump and the top of the tank, the chiller actually only cuts on around 5 days a year, which is really nice, but it is a nice thing to have. And then on that top shelf, you'll also notice it's the battery backups that I have for both the Gyri as well as the MP40. And then just on the top row and the bottom row, I have a couple different computer cooling fans, really to just help keep this area ventilated for whenever that chiller does kick on, and to keep those battery backups well preserved. So this right cabinet essentially doesn't get opened too often, as there's not many things that I store in there, but it serves its purpose. And moving on to the cabinet on the left side of the tank. On the top shelf, you'll see the Neptune Trident, and I just have all the different reagent containers outside, which just makes it easier every time I have to change it. Just less hassle having to pull that tray out and potentially kink one of the lines or anything like that. And you'll also see the two Red Sea Reef Dose 4s that I have. Absolutely love them when they stay on, which is most of the time. And moving on to the bottom shelf, you'll see the dosing containers that I have of extra dosing fluids, as well as the Trident waste container. And while we're down here, I guess I can kind of briefly mention what I'm dosing on this tank, and I'll kind of pop up the daily amounts that I dose as well on screen. For my main elements that I'm adding, for calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium, I'm using the Tropic Marin balling method with A and K trace elements. This blue line that you see here dangling is the fourth line where I've been doing acro power. I haven't set it back up since I have the new tank set up, after I had noticed the line gunked up and clogged with it. So I probably will start that again here soon, but that's currently not being dosed. And on the right side, I'm dosing the Kato Grow and Nopox as well, which I use to primarily control nitrates, but they also do have the effect of lowering phosphates. So because of that, I'm dosing phosphates as well to keep them up around the 0.1 to 0.2 range, so that their container is phosphate that I'm adding. And that's going to wrap up this tank tour. Definitely leave any questions that you guys may have below in the comments, and I'll definitely be sure to answer them all. And if you guys would like, I can definitely do a much more in-depth tank tour, which will just talk about more of the smaller pieces of equipment that run this tank, like the top fan that I use for evaporated cooling, or any of the different level sensors or water leak sensors, or where I place them. So just definitely let me know in the comments if that would be a video you guys would like, and I can get on it. And if you liked what you saw today, go ahead and leave a like on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to enter the free frag giveaway of Little Shop of Horror Zoas happening at the end of this year. Thanks, and happy reefing, everyone! In today's video, we're taking a tour of the tank 4 months after setting it up. Mama, come here. Ivy. Ivy.